Hello everyone and welcome back. It is January 2025 and Happy New Year to everyone. Thanks for watching my video. I generally don't like to do too much in the very beginning, but since this is the first video of the new year, hopefully I'll get the music right in this video. But also I do want to point out that I do my videos alphabetically, A through Z. This is the first look of the month of January. A lot of Patreons and tribes and creators like to release throughout the month, and science fiction seems to be a little bit more heavy on this, and so we'll definitely be coming back and looking at these in a little bit more. This being my first overview video for the month, it's going to be a bit of a bigger video because we're going to be covering quite a lot in that. So let's get started. Let's look at 3D Art Guy. 3D Art Guy is doing a Grimdark release. Here we have a Champion, and then he said Grey Knight is actually the second release. That's his words, not mine, but they look pretty much like the same guy. A little bit different armor for the most part. But here's an alternative sculpt of that. That's one thing 3D Art Guy does very well, is doing multiple sculpts. Here we see a Fire Elf, and on the right we see the loyalty reward for those of you that have been with him for a while. We have a couple of chaos kind of marine sorts. We have some noisy junkies and a noisy sister as well. And wow, that is a horrifying render. But I see why they're called noisy junkies. You can see the effect of the weapon that he is using here with his guitar. And yeah, a sonic attack, pretty powerful. There's also these alternative sculpts of the noisy sister, and I think I prefer the face of this one a bit more than the other one. Anvil Digital Forge says that if you back them in January, you'll be getting this release, this modular armor, very nicely done armor, put it together lots of ways. But you also are going to be getting this set as well. And this set is just some of the options that you can put together from what all you'll be getting. Again, these are multi-part modular creations here. And this is just some of the pieces that you'll be getting. I don't think I had room to put everything here of what they're doing. I kind of like the coloration here just to show you how the different parts can come together, but this is designed, these images here are put out by Anvil Digital Forge to show you, hey, you can make these with the pieces that we're giving you this month. If you want something that's more robotic, which most of these honestly look robotic, if you want several different kits, if you want to put your astromech together with, you know, Gatling guns or missile launchers or both, you can do it this month with Anvil Digital Forge. Arcane Whiskers is doing Cathedral Ruins this month, along with Commander Atlan and a Nemesis Android. And a bit more Cathedral Ruins, and I don't know why I put that pillar on the same repeated, but sorry about that. Archvillain Games does both fantasy and science fiction. We're going to look at the Ardir Syndicate Oppression. So the Ardir Quester 1, you can see him with the Hound on the right here, or version 2. Here the Ardir Hound comes in version 1 or version 2. And then you have the Ardir Breacher. Now the Breachers all come with a shield, and I think they all have batons. Clubs, riot gear, basically. So there are 10 sculpts of those. We also have these Freewilligs. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. These come with a few different weapon choices. And these guys, I will say one thing, I've said this before about Archvillain and I'll say it again. Their names are so unique. There's no confusing them for another creator's creations. Yeah, so about, what was that, 5? Yeah. Repressors, we get about 10 of those as well. Different armor, different poses, but the weapon is pretty much the same in all cases. Atlan Forge tends to release throughout the month. They have done release number 1, which is the Asgardian Demolishers. You get several different weapon choices here. That's about, what, 5 different weapon choices, a couple of backpacks, 5 heads, about 3 heads, 4 legs. Put them together in more ways than I can count. And just look at a few examples. Battlecat Miniatures is doing Ancient Warfare. Now, granted, this isn't really sci-fi, but it's their full release, and I want to put it in here for that. But we have World War II releases. I believe those tanks are Japanese, if I remember correctly. And Horse and Musket. A bunch of artillery groups, as well as some cavalry. Bestiarum Miniatures, thanks Robert Joker again for recommending them, is doing a few different releases. Now, on the left, we have that Spiral Darum group, and this looks more fantasy-oriented to me. But we also have this release, which is Alstein, and I would dare say these are more science fiction-y, because of the lab work and so forth, but yeah. And then there's also the Penitent Hero, which is these 3. That guy in the back could be fantasy, but the one on the right has a gas mask. And when you get to that level of technology, I just feel like that's more science fiction. So let's look at the Alstein release here. So Alstein is, wow, how many heads does that thing have? 4, 5, 6? Obviously some sort of experiment that has been done here. And wow, these things are, there's a lot going on here. So this is just a great example of, just because you can, I don't think you should. Beyond Space is releasing throughout the month, and it's pretty early on, so we do have this release for January, Adris the Veilwalker. We'll be coming back to look at Beyond Space some more later. Crippled God Foundry for the month of January is doing Gnolls across both their fantasy and science fiction release. We're going to look at Roar of the Warrior. So Roar of the Warrior, we have some Gnoll bikers, which to me just fits. We have some Gnoll Raiders, and then we have a Leonin Headhunter. Now this Headhunter comes in a couple of varieties. He comes on his own bike, and he comes as a road warrior as well. I kind of want to see a series now about a lion in the future. Imagine Mad Max done, but with lions and hyenas. It would be interesting, wouldn't it? And of course, the abandoned gas station. Cyberforge Studios is doing Grim Realms, which is their wargaming release, as well as Titan City Stories, which is their skirmish/RPG release. So for their RPG release, we're going to look at Motherland. We have Jan Hearth. We have Yagunia and Kodiak. Kodiak has a set of militia that come with him. There's also some civilians this month. Shadow Knights from are the wargaming release for this month. Cleansing Squad comes in several different sculpts with different weapon choices. And here we have a Cleansing Squad that has like a pistol and a melee weapon. And all of this is led by Lord Drake Aldor. We also have a Shadow Master in Bane Dread Knight. They also have some terrain here, which seems to be like a playground terrain. And some Grid Runner terrain as well. And Cyberforge and Titanforge always do a series of bases too. Cyberstash, sorry, I was going to say DM Stash, but the Cyberstash is done a couple of previews, not very many detailed previews yet, but January model will be Yusuke Inari Akazawa, a cyber ninja. And the Merc pack will be Chrome Coast Police Riot Squad, plus Inari's Shuriken. So hopefully we'll get some better renders of these soon. Dakka Dakka has a free model, the rat miner here. So be sure to check out the miner rat and get that model for free. For the month of January, this is their intended releases. So we have a swarm of miner rats, which is a build kit. We have a Gargant Digger Rat and the Mine Rat Shift Supervisor, as well as some bikers. Very similar to the other releases I've seen, like the Mantic Vault release. We have the HDHI Part 2. This is the Holy Department of Heretical Investigations. They're continuing their investigations. We have the Ignosaurus Clan Warriors Tactical Squad. Looks like he's smiling. Commander Mark 1 Midnight Sun Covenant. And Grimwald the Fused Twins is a loyalty reward, coming out in January. Duncan Shadow, that Alric recommended I look into, just a very brief, because these are typically more fantasy releases. We have Holy Warriors with rifles, and looking at those rifles, to me that just speaks science fiction, so I wanted to include them. Edge Miniatures has put out their first look at January. I feel like we're going to see more from them, but this is kind of what you're getting for the month of January. Some Tech Pirates and some Skyborn Scavengers and some Cursed Elves too. Now again, remember they do both 8mm releases, so very small, and they do the typical 28mm releases too. So for the Tech Pirates, which is a 28mm release, you get some Hunters. For the Skyborn Scavengers, you get some ranged warriors. Now these come with bows or with guns and weapons, as well as a leader. For their 8mm range, the Cursed Elves have arena warriors that can be put on these various squadrons. And then we have a Super Titan for the Tech Elves at 8mm. Now again, this whole thing is not 8mm. Obviously the little bitty guys in the pilot seat are 8mm, but I'm just really impressed. It reminds me of Saturday morning cartoon shows. Well, not cartoons, but yeah.
It's morphin' time!
And here's some Tech Elves. This is the Super Titan again, 8mm. I think he's working on alternative leg poses as well. So, and again, of course, you have multiple head choices that you can use for this. Really impressive. Ghamak has just done a coming soon preview, and this is pretty much all we've got a look of right now. Ghamak kind of releases throughout the month a little bit. Now they have done something I've never really seen done before, and I'm not exactly sure how you go about getting this. It took me a second to understand what this was, but this is what they call their last chance tier. I don't know if this is still available or not. I think it is. But if you missed something that you really, really wanted in 2024, they put together this sampling, and there's a list of everything over on the right that you get in this last chance tier. Notice you get miniatures from 4 different armies: the Cosmic Devourers, the Vengeful Angels, the Heretic Knights, and the Undying. They have also put out a calendar to show you what they're going to be releasing and when for the first 4 months of 2024. 2025, excuse me. Wow. I did see this image, and I believe this is the January release, but I could be wrong. I think they had it on their Instagram. Ichi Forge, I normally have in my fantasy videos, but when I was recording my fantasy video, I realized, wait a second, those are pistols in those guys' hands. So let's look at the Tempest Wayfarers. So Samson Strider here can come with the pistol, or he can come with a sword. So if you want to use him in fantasy, you can. Same thing here with Emmerich Bullseye. Though Bullseye wouldn't make quite as much sense without the gun, would it? And then Eliam Swiftcut. Now, he does not have an alternative weapon shown, but we can just call it a crossbow, right? There's also some nice bases that come with Ichi Forge as well. Kyoushuneko Miniatures, Alric recommended to me, has only put out a preview of their science fiction release. So for Soviets, we see a heavily armored bear, a medium mortar team for the Finnish infantry, as well as some ski troops. They also want to do some ski troops for the Finnish infantry, some scouts, and NCO something commanding officer. I'm sorry, was never military, sadly. And then an Australian general, Thomas Blamey, they want to add to their list. So these are kind of previews of what they're planning on working on. Loot Studios has put out a preview of the science fiction release. Again, this doesn't come out till the 15th, but it seems like Wrecking Ball is the theme here. No, Hex Machina, sorry. So this is Wrecking Ball, sorry. Hex Machina is the list. And here we have Billy Cyberhand. Kind of a goblin, I want to say musician, but that might be more of like a gamer, almost like a power glove. Here we have Rockfist Jolene. She's a Cyclops. Now that I think about it, where else do I know a future series that has a Cyclops featured? Here we have Blackjack Flash. And again, I'm not including everything that they do for this. Just doing a kind of an overview. Here we have Karma Chameleon. Reminds you of a song, doesn't it? Here we have Nikolai, the Traitor Runner. He's a dwarf. Interesting. We also have some neon stalls, and it says dinner. I think it's supposed to be diner. And then there was the private judge, and I saw this model because I was like, okay, that's enough preview. No, we've got to include this guy here. So here we have a judge. Everyone's guilty until proven innocent, but maybe I wouldn't give chase if my pockets were a little bit heavier. That doesn't sound like a good guy. Private judge is probably right. And then there's a chained ghoul, which I guess is the other end of the chain that the private judge had attached. And interesting. There's a lot going on in this release. I'm actually looking forward to this release. Loot, I don't always like your sci-fi releases, but I'm looking forward to this one. The Makers Cult is doing some releases. It says January 2024, part 1. Hold on, let me fix that for you. There we go. I fixed that for you. Sorry about that. So this is the first look of their January releases that we're getting. Pretty nice looking little tank there. So we have these modular troops here that come with multiple bases, multiple sculpts. Here is what they look like assembled and painted. Here we see our tank. Again, I think this is more like a APC, an armored personnel carrier, but we have some cavalry. And we also have some preview art of some things to come. Alpha Warrior Mark II. And also some dismounted knight pilots that come from That Evil One. As well as Valor Cores. These are currently headless and they are under construction, but they're looking at doing 30 bodies. Wow, yes, 30 bodies of these guys in multiple poses, slightly different outfits. There's a lot of options here. So there's some of what these might look like together. Wow, Maker's Cult always impresses. Mantic Vault for the month of January is doing mostly a fantasy release, but there's a little bit of science fiction here. I think before I thought this was Marauders. This was not. This is an Enforcer Damator platform. And this is an Interceptor Sensor Array upgrade part. So this goes on the back of your vehicle to upgrade it with that option. Moid has put out a small preview of some miniatures here. So this is a 6-ray. Very impressive. If you like modular mechs, I think this is worth checking out. Very cool options. Mr. Modulork likes to release throughout the month, and we don't always get everything that Mr. Modulork does because he releases up until the very end of the month, and I don't usually like to do a video that close to the end. But here's a preview of what you might get in the free tier for the month of January. So go join for free, folks. Nerikson has put out Neo Nixie. This is the diorama version. Lots of details. Lots of very big details, like the stitching on the pants, the lines in the back, in her back. She also comes as a standalone. And then we have Ramona, the Wasteland Warrior. And a bust. One-page rules is got a few things delayed this month, so I think we're going to be looking at them a little bit more for January. Their legendary release is obviously part of fantasy. I do like to point out that their welcome pack includes some dwarf guilds on the right and some Space Quest guys down on the bottom. There's also some fantasy releases that come in their welcome pack, and they change that up every few months. For 3D printing, we do have some scatter terrain over on the left, some urban scatter terrain. And on the right, we have the Warfleet's Xenos fleet. For Human Defense Force, we have these folks. I believe these are snipers on the right. And on the left, I believe these are the forward observers. And I believe these are more of the snipers. So the previous ones were probably sniper leaders. But there's some tanks and things that we haven't quite seen yet. So Papsikels does a couple of releases. So let's look at their preview. We have some space combat engineers. We have some necromorph slashers. And the necromorphs are some of the creepiest things I believe I've seen in a while. Here we have Paps Industries WYPMCS operators. Sorry, I don't know what those acronyms mean. But these are just good, generic science fiction troops. We have the Elite Xeno Praetorian 1 and 2. More sculpts of those. We have the Democracy Troopers, Hell Bloodhounder 1 and 2. And some doors as well. Now, Papsikels also does a Cyberpunk tier, and we don't always get a chance to preview those, but they seem to put out a preview of the Cyberpunk this time. So let's take a look at those. Here we have PCPD Hypertac C-SWAT unit. Sorry, I didn't order those. You also have the Capsule Gang. These are bikers. So here we have Ichi and Kai. Notice the bikes are slightly different. And obviously the riders. Here we have Mitsuri and Tetsu. I'm curious how much the bikes and the riders are interchangeable. Probably not much, sadly. Here we have Yamagata and Yuji. And here we have Kaneda, which comes in a couple of different poses. We have Christmas Kel C and Papsilord Immacarum Battle Form. Trauma Troop Air Taxi AV-22, as well as another Hypertac C-SWAT unit, and some Ruined Walls. And a couple more of the C-SWAT. Piper Makes has put out some previews. Again, very modular sets. All sorts of hand options here. And here's some examples of how you can put these together. They also put out another release of these guys. The renders are just extremely well done. Very nice looking minis. Not that there's anything small about them. Print Minis is doing some mostly like scatter terrain sorts of stuff so far. The STLs are released weekly, notice, so we may come back and look at them a little bit more. But we have some canteen scatter as well as some office scatter. We have some Data Hunters too, the Varos Sin Gang, as well as some Cyber Dogs. Printerra Studios is doing this release this month. Not exactly sure what to exactly refer to it as. We have Stealth Hagen, Maya Daz, 7 sizes of Prism Camo Base. And then we have some Nuns and Egg Armor, Alpheas, and yeah, there's a lot going on here. Unfortunately, this is the only picture I have, so we'll just hang here for a second. Project Mobius has put out a power generator for the month of January, part of Sci-Fi Outpost Ymir. We have a barrack. Some turrets. And a troop transport. PS Miniatures has put out the Divine Order Death Maidens Volume 2 bundle. And at first I was like, this is fantasy. And I was like, no, that's pretty sure that's a chainsword. Puppetswar Miniatures unfortunately doesn't have any previews. They don't typically do that much, even during the month. But in January, you'll be getting Heavy Guardian Battle Walkers, Super Sneaky Bugs, Orc Bushi Chieftain, and an Orc Cyborg Chieftain. If I had renders to show you, I would, but I don't, unfortunately. RedMakers and Adeptus Miniatures. I think this is kind of like Maker's Cult, where I think I'm getting the suspicion Maker's Cult is a multiple group, and this one is as well. So we get these 12 units here. This example of a pose. We have 11 units of, which seem to be halflings. And then we have multiple units of these guys. And this kind of gang-related, or gang-inspired group. RNE Studio, I'm including here because it's a gray area, where is this sci-fi or not? I'd rather include it than not. So Blizzard Volume 3, most of which all seem to be fantasy releases here. I don't see any StarCraft-inspired ones. But Western RPG Volume 9, and again, this is very fantasy-oriented. But the classic JRPG can sometimes be a little bit on the more sci-fi side. But the main reason I'm including this is for their champion tier, there's the Jurassic Park inspired models this month. And they have partnered with someone else to actually give these guys stats for, I believe it's Zombicide, which is a board game, version of Jurassic Park. So if you're interested in Zombicide, if you're interested in Jurassic Park, if you're interested in both, you may want to check out the Champion tier release for this month of RNE Studio. RPG Figures is kind of a low tier model. They release, for about $1 or $2, one model a month in the sci-fi realm. For $2 you get a fantasy one too. And this month you get this droid here. Skullforge Studios does not have any renders to show yet, but here are their plans for the month of January. I guess I need to go check out that movie Prospect. It's from a few years back. Stationforge, excuse me. Wow, I saw the skull. Stationforge has not done any previews for 2025 yet, but I did want to give them a shout out really quickly here for their December 2024 recap. This was everything they released in the month of December. So if you like getting a lot of miniatures from several different factions, Stationforge is one of those that has you covered. Tablehammer has put out some previews for the month of January. Here we have the Pegasus Assault Squad multi-part kit on the left, as well as Pulmonax Prime with his prey. They're also they did a Throwback Thursday. This is apparently one of the first releases they ever released, the Buzz attack drones. And that will be included in the month of January for all their current subscribers. They have also reached out to El Mutanto, who is a creator on Colts 3D, and have gotten this release, the Angelfish MBT. Very nice tank miniature, which comes with a few different options for the pilot as well. Traders Galaxy Miniatures and Games has done Bot War Space Portal Attack. I do believe this is part of the January release. And I believe this is a January release too. I may be wrong, but this is Colonel Stomov's Gulag Detachment for Rise of the Democracy. I could barely read that. Txarli Factory is done some ruined tanks for their sci-fi release. Unit 9 this month has done, well, like psychic warriors of sorts. So I do like the way they've released their miniature previews. These are Psycho Strikers or Psycho Tracers squads. And you can see these guys come in a few different poses. A few different weapons, a few different loadouts. This is a Peacekeeper Alpha. And they have a helicopter, which is called a Hyper Wasp, apparently. Very nice miniature. Of course, the Psycho Tracers can go in there and help man the guns. We also have Vex Ashford. She comes in a couple of different sculpts. As well as a transponder. They also put out some gaming mats, which I believe are 2D printed, and some grid hunters. All of that from Unit 9 for the month of January. Velrock was recommended to me by Alric, and we have these guys from a galaxy far, far away that are heavily inspired there. We'll be coming back hopefully to look at more of this later. Wargames Atlantic always has such a huge release, they can never do it in just one post, which is great. I appreciate that, but trying to piece it together is very difficult. These are Renaissance Ottoman Janissaries with firearm. I do not know my history well enough to know much about these guys, sadly. Deathfields, we have a Harvester Stampede, so going from one end of history to another, distant future to distant past, or reverse that. We have a Loyal Lusitanian Legion set, I'm pretty sure. Now, this guy with the sword, his miniature has actually been corrected. Apparently there was an error there, so that's why he's here on this page here. They do like to update their miniatures as problems arise. Here we have some guys. I thought these would be fantasy release, but then I saw the guns and I was like, oh no, yeah, these are empires. We're going to put this in sci-fi. Here we have some more gunman squads. Here we have a Harvester Egg Nest. And these are the female Bulldog Infantry. Now, I don't know if someone complained or what, but you'll notice their outfits here have since been updated so that they have, I guess it got cold outside with the snow that's coming into the country as I record this. Maybe they needed to button up. So, yeah. On that note, with the winter weather that's supposed to be hitting the area, I'm recording this on Sunday, January 5th. I hope everybody stays safe and warm, and I will see you in a week or two for another video as we look at updated releases for the month of January 2025. Thanks for watching. Here's hoping I got the audio right this time.